Something intriguing coming out of the courts, not only intriguing, but actually of great import in as far as how we deal with issues of HIV and AIDS. A recent judgment by the Free State Division of the High Court in Bloemfontein clarifying a key point of South African law. Publicly disclosing someone's HIV status may constitute a breach of privacy, but not necessarily defamation. The ruling arose from a case in which a Numsa union leader revealed a member's HIV status during a grievance meeting, prompting emotional distress and an initial damages award of 100,000 rand, which was later overturned on appeal. The court's decision underscores the need to treat privacy and defamation as distinct legal claims and highlights the broader challenge of protecting dignity and confidentiality for people living with HIV. I'm joined now by TAC Secretary General Sibongile Tshabalala. Good afternoon and thank you for your time. Just in broad brush strokes, your overall impressions about this judgment. It was interesting, and I said earlier on, intriguing, because the initial claim was one of defamation, but the judge and the judges went to great lengths to say defamation and a violation of privacy are not necessarily the same thing. Your overall impressions about this judgment?
It is so sad that even now in 2025, we're still having such challenges of people being discriminated of HIV. And, you know, it's a law that no one has a right to disclose my sickness to anyone. And if I tell you about my status, that doesn't mean that you can make an example of my status. Even if you want to refer to some of the cases or anything, you cannot do that. And the court, what it has done, it has put us as people living with HIV on the spot so that people can do anything in whatever they do with our confidential information. So this is very sad for us as people living with HIV, because it seems like we are not even protected by the law. But also the law says we need to be respected. Anyone, not even only a person living with HIV, but anyone. You cannot just go around and disclose anyone's sickness without that person's consent.
To be fair, the court does make the point that it is not saying that there is no claim to be made against a person who unlawfully discloses another person's HIV status, and makes the point that it is a violation of the person's dignity to disclose without their consent. But what it then says, and I would like you to comment on it, is that it cannot declare that disclosure to be defamation, because to do so, according to the court, would be to play to the stigmas that people attach with being HIV positive. And the court goes on to say that being HIV positive is basically living with a treatable illness and is not a commentary on a person's moral standing.
My sickness is my problem, and I'm the one who has to disclose it if I want to disclose it. No one has a right to disclose it on my behalf. Even if it's not even HIV, even if it's cancer, no one has a right to go around and just make an example about anyone's sickness. It is a defamation for us, because what if I'm not a person who's open to my state about my status? What if where I'm living, I'm still living under in a place where stigma is still a problem? What if my family doesn't know about my status? I haven't disclosed to my children or anyone. So whether I tell you as my friend or as my colleague, you have no right to go out and talk about it. You have no right to reference it. I want to understand the law, but I believe that the court, but I believe that I think they overlooked the very important part of it about how many people are going to be affected about this. The defamation, because this is my sensitive information. This is me. And what if where I'm going, I'm using that against me?
Yeah.
So there is a case. It is a defamation, because you have no right to go out and talk about my status.
So in a way also, Sibongile, the court says it wanted to lead the conversation around that stigma that you are talking about, and saying that if it had granted it as defamation, as defined by the law, it would have been endorsing those stigmas by basically saying that if you are HIV positive, there's something morally defective about you. And the court was saying, we don't want to do that. So we'd rather direct this person to another branch of law. So I guess I'm coming back to the same point that says you don't believe that the court is in a way perhaps leading the conversation, and maybe society and pockets of society are not ready to embrace living with HIV as living with an illness, as opposed to making commentary about your moral, your moral standing.
Thulasizwe, if we can be honest, have you ever had somebody being insulted about having cancer or being diabetic or any illnesses that are there? You don't find that happening.
Yeah.
And we cannot address that by saying, no, we are allowing, because, if we say there is no definition, then it means we are allowing the public to continue to stigmatize other people based on their sickness. So the court needs to stop that, because even if I disclose to you that I have cancer, you have no right to say, for an example, Sibongile has cancer. No one has a right to do so. No one has a right to do so.
Yeah.
So HIV, the way it was introduced, it had stigma. And the way it was dealt with from the start in our country, it has stigma that is attached to it. And no one, honestly, no one who wants to be associated with something that people don't like. We know we are living with HIV, we are addressing the issues of stigma, but us as people living with HIV, we know how best to do it.
Yeah.
We know how to respect other person's privacy and sickness. You cannot just go around and talk about that and say, no, I'm trying to address it. Even the court cannot rule against that. I still believe that the member of Numsa has to take the matter forward, because no one has a right to say, because Sibongile has epilepsy, now this is what is happening. They don't make such example. Why that person only specifically talk about HIV?
Yeah. So what would you like to see going forward? Because I suppose with this having come through from the High Court in the Free State, it's the beginnings of shaping the law as far as this is concerned. What's an approach in your view that would be sensitive to the nuances that you just spoke to about the privacy and the dignity that is entailed in having that sovereignty to disclose if you want to disclose, and not to disclose if you don't want to disclose? So how should we navigate it as the law takes shape around this area of defamation on the one hand versus a violation of dignity and privacy that is not necessarily defamation on the other hand?
I think that we need to use the law to make an example. The first judgment, we were happy about it, because it will teach so many people to say you cannot go around and do what that guy has done. But also it will teach people that a person with HIV is not different from a person with cancer, epilepsy, or any disease that is there, or any sickness that is there. So we all have to be treated equally. But also, it's really important for the law to teach the communities to say, HIV, it's not something that you can just go around and use it, because it's very sensitive, it's very private, as other sicknesses. If I have diabetic, I'm just going to disclose to the people that I'm confident that they will understand my issues. If I'm not comfortable also to disclose, I'm not comfortable. If I tell you, you have no right to go out and tell another person, then when you go and talk about it, especially on a space where there are 14 members, now you're disclosing to the public, not only just to one person, but to the whole public, because out of those 14 people, how many are going out and go and tell others?
Yeah.
So that is a defamation, because everyone will look at me to say, how did I get HIV? As I indicated earlier, to say, HIV, it was introduced with stigma. And everyone who has HIV now, people, they think that you were sleeping around, you were doing this, you were doing this, you were doing that, of which we have HIV in different ways. But it's very important for
Yeah.
people to understand that you cannot just close any sickness for anyone. You are violating that people's right. We are defaming that person because we are taking away my confidentiality.
Right.
We are taking my privacy into public.
All right. Thank you for that. That's an interesting take on that judgment. And thank you for sharing with us this afternoon. That's Sibongile Tshabalala of the Treatment Action Campaign. Yeah, as I say, clearly the debate will rage on around that judgment coming out of the Free State Division of the High Court.